The webinar is being recorded today, so feel free to just listen. You don't need to take notes. We'll share the recording with you afterwards. I'll also take your questions afterwards as well. So we're here to talk primarily about track and field, but just a brief introduction to the company first of all. So First Point USA were established over 25 years ago. We are the world's leading sports scholarship agency, and we've placed over 35,000 athletes into 2,500 different universities and colleges. We are NCAA certified. NCAA is the National Collegiate Athletic Association. And so we're certified to provide a recruitment service to students and families to assess their eligibility, to promote them to US universities, and ultimately to secure and negotiate their placements into US universities. We're trusted by partners all over the world. One of those athletics partners is Ultimate Athletics in the UAE, but you'll see other prominent names there like Arsenal Football Club, Philadelphia Union, Hong Kong Rugby, for example. So partners like this trust us. They're obviously organisations who deliver youth sport, and they want to provide an ongoing pathway into education for those junior athletes to transition ultimately to senior performance, but taking the stepping stone along the way of US college sport. So a range of clubs and partners that we do work with around the world. There are over 70 staff at First Point. So our CEO and original founder is Andrew Keane, who played soccer at the University of Cincinnati. We have a head of admissions who was actually an admissions lead at the University of Nebraska, so Beth James, who works specifically with students on the filing of their applications. So their essays, their personal information, and things very specific to each university they might be applying to. As we mentioned, I lead on the Olympic sports. My own background is track and field, and one of our other track and field staff members is Dominic Smith, who was educated at Tennessee Tech and graduated from there as well. So both Dominic and myself have competed for our own home countries, so Northern Ireland in my case and Wales for him, but also competed for Great Britain as well as in the NCAA at Division 1 level. Just a little bit on my own story. So I threw javelin for Great Britain as an under-23 athlete, so kind of travelled throughout Europe and the world to do that. I was recruited by McNeese State as a javelin thrower and got a full scholarship to go there. And I was able to complete my master's degree there. I'd always been involved in coaching, so even through high school, I was going out as a high school student out into primary schools, even age 17, to coach. So I wanted to pursue something very much related to that, got my degree in performance sport and went straight into a career in sports management and development at age 24. So I've been in that kind of industry now for a number of years. I've led Commonwealth Games teams to Gold Coast and to Birmingham. I've led British athletics teams to World University Games, European Championships, and I've coached athletes myself, particularly in the throws and combined events, to European medals and to Commonwealth medals. So I kind of understand the journey of a junior athlete. I understand the transition going from high school athlete to trying to make the break to become a senior athlete. And often it's about determining what are the key needs of the athlete as they make that transition. What do they need to have in their environment to be able to progress towards international championships and Olympics? So I do that now for First Point, and it really is about finding the best training environments for young athletes. So that is academically, athletically, and also financially as well for their parents. So that is a role at First Point, and one that I really enjoy. All this is possible because US college sport is a big business. A lot of that money in college sport is generated by college football. So there's a TV contract for over $7 billion for college football. Some of the world's biggest stadiums are on US campuses. You can see there, University of Michigan houses over 100,000 fans. And last year, a ladies volleyball game held at University of Nebraska set the record for the largest attendance ever. So US college sports, it is very appealing to fans. There's a lot of TV rights, there's a lot of merchandising, and a lot of memorabilia around that, and that continues to generate significant investment. So you see that sort of plays out in the revenues that the universities make, but also in how they're able to treat their students. So huge kit deals with Nike or with Under Armour, strength and conditioning facilities, physiotherapy, some of the best stadiums in the world. So the big business of college sport kind of keeps going round, and the students every year continue to benefit from all of those things. Looking more specifically though at the track and field. So track and field and cross country is actually the second largest of all NCAA sports. So last year was 103rd outdoor championships, so national outdoor championships in the NCAA. So it's been existing for 103 years, okay, and for the cross country championships for 83 years. There are 950 universities delivering track and field, so with track and field programs on their campus, and 1,700 universities with cross-country teams. So that is bettered only by basketball, which is larger. So track and field and cross-country collectively is the second largest sport in all of the NCAA. That allows over 92,000 student athletes to participate in the sport annually, and it means that the average team size, including track and field and cross-country, male and female, the average team size is 54 across these universities in the NCAA. So if you're thinking, is there a place for me? Well, there are 92,000 places at 1,700 different universities, and our role is to find the best of those places for the eligible students. In terms of the success of college track and field, over 20% of NCAA track and field athletes are coming from outside of the United States. So 1 in 5 comes from outside the United States, but they're disproportionately successful. So nearly half of the individual gold medals at last year's championships were won by international students. Okay, so international students in the NCAA are incredibly successful in terms of winning the championship medals. At the Paris Olympics, there were 85 either current or previous NCAA students that won medals just in athletics, and they came from 26 different countries. So it is an incredibly diverse and international environment. It's not as though when a student athlete from the UK or from the Middle East or from Ireland goes that they're in a minority. In fact, at the championships, when they look around, 1 in every 2 students will be an international student. So very, very international sport, and very successful for the international students as well. Just taking a case study of the Paris Olympics, Great Britain had a handful of medals essentially, but a large number of those medals were won by former NCAA athletes. So you may not recognize Josh Kerr here in his New Mexico kit, and people maybe watching him now on TV don't recognize that he began his career at University of New Mexico. So a Scottish high school student who got a scholarship to New Mexico. He actually was so successful that he was able to turn pro at age 21, okay, 2017. But even though he turned pro, he continued to be based at the University of New Mexico, and he continued to finish his degree as well. So he's gone on now to become world champion and Olympic silver medalist as well. Also on the screen, Amber Anning. So started her college career at LSU. Amber was actually one of the athletes I would manage on Great Britain teams before I came across to First Point. She was frequently winning European medals, frequently on relay teams for Great Britain. So she began her career at LSU, and she's finished her career just last year at Arkansas, so completed her 4 years of undergraduate studies. She picked up a bronze medal at the Paris Olympics with the 4x4 team. And also on that team, Nicole Jurgen, University of Southern California. And then on the men's relay side, Louis Hinchcliffe at Houston and Nathaniel Mitchell Blake at LSU. So you can see, even just taking the UK as a case study, how many of the Olympic medalists have gone through that US university pathway. In terms of the type of students we work with, we're not limited to the UK or to Ireland. We work with students worldwide. So The athlete on the left began last year at California State Fullerton. We were able to place Maya Lee, who was coming from Millfield School. We were able to place her with one of the most elite hurdles coaches in the US, so actually the US record holder and 5th fastest hurdler of all time. So we placed Maya Lee at California State Fullerton with Dominique Arnold, one of the greatest hurdlers of all time. Oliver Patton has been a successful athlete at under 18 and under 20 for Great Britain in the 3K, and we were able to place Oliver at Oklahoma, which would be widely regarded as the strongest distance running program and middle distance program in the nation. Okay, so Oklahoma State University. So Oliver's from Scotland. German athlete Yannick Kraus has just begun his time at Harvard University. He's a decathlete. We worked for Yannick for a couple of years to kind of nurture his development through his SAT, through his decathlon scoring, and ultimately, whenever he was able to exceed 7,000 points, is when the Ivy League opportunities really opened for him. So Yannick is from Germany. And then we have Nina Allmark from the Middle East. So Nina goes to school in Dubai, and she has just begun this year as a middle distance athlete at University of Texas Tyler. So hopefully you can see we work with males and females, field events and track events, and athletes from all regions of the world. Why would you choose a US university? And it's important for athletes to think about what they have in their current training environment and what they're going to need to succeed as a senior athlete. So if you're a schools athlete right now, it's most likely that you might do 2 club sessions a week and maybe a weekend session. So maybe around 3 days a week. And most likely you'll work with part-time or volunteer coaches. The difference at a US university is that the coaching is delivered by full-time staff members who are paid employees of the university. So it's full-time coaching. Often a coaching staff on a track and field team would have at least 5 staff members. So a director, head of sprints, head of jumps, head of distance, and maybe head of throws as well. Facilities will be on campus, so as a minimum, usually a 400-meter outdoor track, but many of these universities will also have an indoor track and maybe even a cross-country facility on campus as well. The strength and conditioning and the physiotherapy and the recovery methods, the ice baths, underwater treadmills, often integrated as well, so students receive these as part of their track and field program. A lot of students find that as they kind of progress through the junior ranks, the training partners, many of their training partners drop out, or there's not the depth at their own home clubs and training partners. So obviously taking that step to university allows athletes to surround themselves with a depth of training partner as well. Travel is all looked after again by the university. So if you're based in Australia or the UK, you're most likely your parents are dropping you to competitions at the weekend. You're doing your own driving and so on. When you travel as part of a collegiate team, all of that travel is looked after. The team bus collects the team typically on a Thursday evening or Friday morning, arrive at the team hotel on a Friday night and compete all day Saturday and Sunday, and then return back Sunday night for classes on Monday. So having that team travel all wrapped up, it helps to build good culture. It obviously makes things a little bit more fun along the way as well. So you do travel as a team in the US. Obviously, there's a depth of competition, and I'm going to show some statistics now, but there are 300 universities in Division 1 at the top end. If you take the top 100 in most events, you could say that those top 100 are world-class athletes, and many of them are competing at the Olympics or European Championships as well as in the top 100 of the NCAA. It's a chance to combine both academics and athletics, obviously to achieve your degree. So there are not many young athletes coming out of high school who will be ready to become a full-time athlete, but there's also not many who want to leave their sport behind. So combining your degree alongside your sport 5 or 6 days a week gives you the best of both worlds and allows you to truly explore how good you can be and how much of your athletic potential you can fulfill along the way. And then for many, obviously the chance to get a scholarship or financial support really incentivizes them as well to maximize that opportunity. So for many students, it is a financial decision and they can be well rewarded to go to the US. In terms of some of the facilities, I'm just going to use some photographs to explain the facilities in the US. So I was lucky enough to go across to Harvard to assist with the annex placement this year. And this was actually a photograph I took just from the top tier of the indoor stand. So this is Harvard's indoor 200-meter track. It's obviously a bank track, equivalent to some of the best facilities that you would see around the world. So Harvard have their track and field offices. They have a little warm-up and recovery suite here. They've all their changing rooms and they've all their records obviously on the board there that you can see. About 200 yards, you can see just on the left, you can see the outdoors. About 200 yards away, then you can walk onto the 400-meter outdoor track. So those students at Harvard really have everything they need within kind of a 500-yard perimeter, including then also their track and field gym. Okay, so indoor and outdoor facilities, as well as a strength and conditioning suite as well. There's University of Pennsylvania. This is the Penn Relays. You can see there the number of fans that are drawn out. You can see the quality of the track, and you can see in the background the academic facilities as well. So another on-campus outdoor facility. You can see, equivalent to any international grade facility across the world. And Penn Relays is one of those really aspirational meets that many athletes around the world really do aspire to be entered in and to get the chance to run in. We placed this year Finn O'Neill from Ireland, the decathlete at University of Texas, San Antonio. This was one of the photographs his parents sent to me of their track and field gym again, and you can see the parents here touring on an official visit. So again, the very best of strength and conditioning equipment, capacity for probably 50 to 100 athletes to use that gym all at one time. So an extremely appealing facility. And this is the same university. This is their UTSA Centre of Excellence. So within this centre, they have a student-specific library and study hall. They have athletes' dining table where athletes can access one additional healthy meal a day. So maybe a recovery snack or maybe a breakfast if they have an early morning session. It's singled out specifically just for athletes. So it's exclusive to athletes wanting to get a nutritious recovery or more high-performance type meal. So locker rooms, study hall, and just an exclusive space with all of the recovery methodology as well for student athletes to use. So it is truly a centre of excellence. We have obviously 2 athletes this year at Oklahoma. So as I said, widely regarded as the most successful track and field program in the States for middle distance running. And so they have an on-campus cross-country course, and they actually have been able to host then the national cross-country for the past 2 years as well. And again, at Oklahoma State, just a sample of their ice bath and heat recovery methods that are all integrated, and again, exclusive just for track and field. So they're not sharing with any other sport. Just in terms of if someone goes to the US, how would their schedule work for the year? It is important to say that the season begins much earlier, so everything is fitted into the academic year. So whilst we may not be used to running cross-country in the UK here, for example, until around November or December, it's important to know that cross-country in the US begins early September, and it builds up then with 5 or 6 competitions, builds up to the conference championships on the 14th of October. And that's pretty much the same every year. So second weekend in October. Those that qualify from conference make it to regional championships at the end of October, and then the national championships. And I do notice just a typo there, but national championships are middle of November. Okay, so cross country runs through early September, 5 or 6 meets rolling into October, and then into the national championships in November. So an athlete who was really successful might compete around 8 times in total over cross country. In terms of indoors then, so indoors begins very quickly after returning from Christmas break. Conference championships are on the first weekend of March. So athletes will typically again have 5 to 6 competitions in order to prepare for the conference championships. And those conference championships will usually be at the beginning of March. From there, those that have been most successful and hit the qualifying standards will go on to the national championships in the middle of March. And you can see then there's not much gap until outdoors begins. So late March, outdoor competition begins, and then into conference championships, regional championships, and nationals in the middle of June. So an athlete who was doing all of this might find that they're competing maybe 20 weekends across the academic year if they were doing cross-country, indoors and outdoors. Obviously, our throwers and jumpers and sprinters won't be doing any cross-country, but they will be busy almost every weekend from January through until June with their indoors and outdoors. Life is busy as a student athlete. You can see here that often there will be early morning sessions. I always say to students, early morning sessions, unless you're a distance runner, are probably going to be more like 2 or 3 days a week. So if you're a thrower or a sprinter, you might just have 2 or 3 gym sessions in the week. But if you're a distance runner, an early morning run is something done usually 4 or 5 days a week in the US. So an early session, maybe before breakfast, morning classes for at least 4 hours, and then typically into a team meeting and track-based practice, typically in the outdoor 400-meter track in the afternoon, and then either recovery or strength and conditioning. So it is a busy life. It's not for the recreational athlete, let's say. It's for the athlete that's truly aspiring to fulfill their potential. So you can be in classes for up to 20 hours per week, but you can also be in contact with your coaching team up to 20 hours a week. So it is the equivalent of a full-time job to do all of your classes and all of your training and to still get your study done in the evenings. If you do go to US university, how will it be funded? So there are a number of funding routes. One of those is academic scholarship. So the most successful students academically, so those who are maybe straight A students or a mixture of A's and B's, can often achieve academic scholarship, which gives them a portion of funding to reward their academic success. Those that are most valuable to the track team and that are set to make the biggest roster will often be recruited by the head coach, and they will get an athletic scholarship based on their value to the team. Some universities, specifically in Division 3, don't call it academic or athletic scholarship, they call it merit aid, and that is where they look at all of your contributions that you can make to the university, to your academics, your athletics, even your leadership skills, your ability to maybe become a team captain, maybe your essay writing skills, and they wrap that all up in something called merit aid to provide an overall scholarship to you to assist you with paying for university. And then some universities will look at your parents' means, so their income, assets and salary primarily, and they will determine what your financial need is to go to university, and they will then meet that need by offering you financial aid to help close the gap in affordability. And obviously, it goes without saying, if someone gets a full scholarship, it pays for all of their tuition, food and accommodation. But if someone were to get a partial scholarship, then it pays for a percentage of their food, tuition and accommodation. So full scholarship covers essentially everything. Partial scholarship covers a percentage. And of course, a big part of our work at First Point is to negotiate on behalf of our students to help secure the largest scholarships possible. And your scholarship can increase every year, but that will be dependent on upholding your grades, but also your value to the team as well, how much of an impact you make at those championships and whether you're achieving top 8s, for example. So what is a coach-assisted admission? A coach-assisted admission basically means the coach is supporting you to get into the university. So for example, a track and field coach every year may have 6 to 8 assisted admissions for males and for females. And so what they can do is they can actively recruit athletes to fill those spots. Okay, so if they're actively recruiting an athlete, that athlete still needs to be in line with the general academic requirements of the university, but essentially that coach is helping them to get in. So if, for example, a university is a 10% acceptance rate and a coach wants to actively recruit an athlete, well, that athlete won't be facing the 10% acceptance rate or the 1 in 10 chance of getting in. As long as that athlete's grades are in line with what the university needs, that athlete will get in because they've been chosen by the coach to get in, okay? Additional to that, then, the coaches can get academic pre-reads, so they can request that the academic department will do an early review of your transcripts, your GCSEs, your IB, or your A-levels to see whether you are academically suitable. So there's a huge benefit to working with these NCAA coaches. They're opening the door for you to get an early academic review, and they may be opening the door for you to get that place at that university as well. That also means they can review you early for scholarship. They can give you feedback on whether you need some grade improvement, and they can give you feedback on what your scholarship's likely to be and what the cost of attending that university would be. If all of that goes well and they're offering you a place, you get something called a likely letter, which then says you're highly likely to be admitted to this university. Here's your scholarship offer, and do you wish to commit to us? Okay, all of that hugely increases the acceptance rate for an athlete compared to a normal academic student. On the screen there, you can see one of Ireland's track stars, Rashida Adeleke, who's typically been in world and Olympic finals. She's standing there with one of the most famous coaches in the NCAA, Coach Edric Florell from Texas, which is widely regarded to be the biggest sprints program in the nation. You can see there, though, they're at the Olympics, so she's not actually wearing her University of Texas kit. She's there at the Olympics, and because of the success that coach has had with her and how he's been able to develop her, UT have actually allowed him to attend the Olympics to support his athlete as she runs for her nation, which is Ireland. So it is important to say that if athletes really rise to the highest level whilst at university, you see lots of scenarios like this where their track coach at university can actually become their Olympic coach. He's wearing his accreditation around his neck, so he's been equally then accredited by Team Ireland to go and support his athlete. And after those Summer Olympics are done, he'll return back to his day job, which is at the University of Texas with all of his other athletes. So it's important to know that if you really do rise to that level of success, your university will most likely support your track and field coach to go on that journey with you to those major championships whilst you're still a student. In terms of your athletic recruitment and your performance standards, so coaches will need verified results. They'll be looking for what your current athletic level is, but what your level of improvement has been over recent years. The best place for them to get those statistics is Power of 10 if you're in the UK, or World Athletics if you're in another nation. So hopefully student athletes are doing verified competitions with electronic timing and do have these online profiles where their results can be accessed. In terms of video highlights then, coaches will want to see your technique, whether you're a sprinter, a pole vaulter, a triple jumper. They want to see your technique, to see your strengths and weaknesses and how coachable you might be. So video highlights are important to the process. They'll also want to assess you then against the NCAA standards to understand what potential impact you could make on the roster and what potential medals you could win for the track team, essentially. So the US data system for college track and field is TFFRS, and that's where you can see the top 500s in every event for track and field. So I use that really widely to help guide our athletes on best fit teams for them and where they might be best able to make an impact. Coaches do care about your grades. They also care about your SAT because they need you to be in line with the average requirements of the university. So, you know, the track coach at Harvard, even if someone is the world record holder, if they're a D student, the track coach at Harvard simply cannot get them in. Okay, so you do need to have grades that are in line with the universities that are recruiting you. Your degree major is important. Coaches want to hear at the outset what your degree major would potentially be, and they want to know that their university can provide that and will give you a chance to succeed academically as well. The other thing that's important is your rapport that you build with coaches. So through this process, we're introducing lots of athletes to coaches, and those coaches are coming on to have WhatsApp calls, video calls, and so on. But parents don't conduct those calls for the young people, and neither do we. So it's important that when young people meet coaches, that they can conduct themselves well, arriving on time, speaking clearly, asking questions, and being as engaged as possible. So that's a big part of recruitment. If a coach simply doesn't feel that someone has been engaging or polite or mature on a call, they'll of course move on. So building rapport is really important in personal relationships as well. Just to give you some example standards then, and of course it'd be impossible for me to cover all of the 20 track and field events in one webinar, but I thought it would be useful to give you some track and field standards and just as a snapshot. So let's take the men's 100 meters. At the very top end, you'll see 9:75. So a world-class Olympic level time, 9:75 ranks number 1. But if you go down to number 500, athlete number 500 in the rankings, 10.6. Okay, so we've got lots of people, or a handful of people in the UK that can run a time of 10.6. So you can see it goes from world-class Olympic level to a good, let's say, British male under 20 standard. So quite a range there. Of course, who's going to get the bigger scholarships? The people closer to that 10-second mark, okay? And who's going to get maybe the smaller scholarships or end up closer to the bottom of those ranks will be the people running closer to 10.6. So then you see within Division 2, okay, it's not quite as tough at the top. So the top athletes running 10.08, still world class, and it tails off a little bit to 10.92. So even for athletes running 10.92, there are opportunities, but they'll find themselves again slightly down the ranks. And then Division 3 opens up a little bit more, still world class at the top, but even athletes running just about the 11-second mark can find a way into that top 500 in Division 3. So that's just the men's 100, and that shows you how Division 1 is the strongest. Division 2, it's still really strong, but a little bit wider as you go down the rankings. And then Division 3 opens up a little bit, okay, in terms of depth, okay, as you go down, there's more room for that 11-second sprinter. I think you're getting the idea of how the standards kind of work. If I pull out one, maybe just for the ladies 800 then. So again, 158 at the top end of Division 1 is world class, but equally someone running 211 will find an opportunity in the NCAA because that will get them into that top 500. Division 2 is not quite so fast. It's 5 seconds slower to win the Division 2 championships, and actually 2:22. So it does tail off and more room for a greater number of athletes. Division 3 is very similar, 2:05 at the top and 2:21. So definitely more room for a greater number of athletes. They're slightly slower in Division 2 and 3. But what I would say is at the top of each division, it's world class. Okay, so rank number 1 and rank number 10, Division 1, 2, and 3, it's always world class. You can even see Division 3 men's long jump over 8 meters. Okay, so world class at the top. In terms of your application requirements, so let's assume you do get an assisted admission from a coach. You'll still have to submit all of your regular application requirements, including perhaps a Common App. So a Common App is a tool that allows you to collect online basically your references, an application essay, your demographic information, and answer questions about the university that you're going to. You might need to upload your SAT or your ACT certificate. So that's your standardized testing policy. Again, we would guide you on all of this. And if you're not holding a passport from an English-speaking country, then you may also be required to demonstrate proficiency of English. So that could be a requirement as well. The Duolingo, the TOEFL, and the IELTS are all short tests that can be done at home, and we guide students through those as well. So it's important to say for both the SAT and the English proficiency, we have online learning tools, we have instructions on how to book and all of that, but it's just important to know that you may need these things. Obviously, your transcripts are important. Transcript is just another word for academic certificates, and typically US universities look for those certificates from year 9, so year 9, 10, 11, and 12 in US terms. So that's the final 4 years of school. You may go to year 13 in your system. So in that case, the final 4 years would be 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay. Letters of reference will be important. Typically, it's one from your school and one from an external person, maybe your work experience supervisor or your track club or your coach. And then there may be essay writing requirements as well, depending on the university. But all of this only happens after you've been offered an assisted admission from a US coach. In terms of the timelines for US university, so the early decision timeline is those people who want to commit to university very early and they're very clear on the one university they would be committing to. That falls on the 1st of August it opens, and it closes on the 31st of October for the following year. So athletes who've been offered an assisted admission and they want to commit to that one university would typically be submitting their paperwork between 1st of August and 31st of October. So for 2020 students going to university in 2026, we're in that window right now. So the window is now, and that window will close in about 10 days from now. After early decision, there's an early action deadline, and that typically means you can apply up until the end of December and still receive a fairly early notification of your acceptance. After that, there's regular decision, which is when most people apply, and you can apply for up to 20 universities. And then after that, there's rolling admissions, which means if there are places left, you'll still be accepted. What I would say is our very best international recruits will usually be asked to make their applications early decision or early action, because the coaches will have already offered them places in advance of those deadlines. So right now, for the class of 2026, we're in a really important window where many offers are being made. Many students are finalising their commitments. So if you are listening in your class of 2026, I would say you've got no time at all to waste, and you need to be in touch with us very soon, because every day this week, I have seen offers coming out from coaches to athletes, and athletes making commitments. In terms of your eligibility, obviously you're only eligible to go to the US as a student athlete if you're still an amateur. So if you have raced as a pro, if you have signed a deal with Nike or Adidas, you wouldn't be considered amateur. However, it is okay if you have raced alongside pro athletes. There's no problem with that, but you need to have still an amateur status where you're not receiving your salary as a professional athlete. You can only go once you've graduated high school. And of course, though, you can get offers and opportunities presented to you long before you've graduated. So after graduating high school, you actually have a 5-year window in which to go and do 4 college years. So 5-year window opens up, and you can go to the US for 4 years, which actually means you can take a gap year if that would be useful to you, and if that's the way your timeline works out. In terms of core subjects, the NCAA look for 5 core subjects, so English, math, a natural science, a social science, and 1 academic other subject. And they check that you have that at GCSE level, or it would be your middle years. If you're doing the IB diploma, it would be the middle years diploma. So they just look to make sure that you've covered the basis with your core subjects, and then they're checking your average grades as well. So again, this is just outlined the 5 core subjects that you need, and then the average grading scale is shown here. So you need to have an average of a 2.3, and you can see on this chart that if you're scoring 5s or 6s in your GCSEs, or if you're in Scotland or Northern Ireland and you're getting Bs, well then your average by the US equivalent will be 3. Okay, so you'd be well clear of that minimum level eligibility. You would just need to look a little bit more closely at this if you were getting a lot of C grades or a lot of grade 4s, because for the NCAA, you do want to be above a 2.2 for Division 2 or a 2.3 for Division 1. Okay, but again, we'll assess you and we'll help you with understanding all of that. So just kind of getting towards wrapping up now, just a few myths and misconceptions that it's maybe useful to discuss. So if you were thinking that you'll just start considering the US at the same time as maybe doing the UCAS process in your British high school, I would say that's actually too late. So there's a big signing window in November for the following year, and many coaches are already making their offers in that window. So really you need to be started the process as a student just after your GCSEs in an ideal world. We can still work with you if you're coming to it very late, but the ideal time would be just after you get those GCSE results. It's important to know that law, medicine, and physiotherapy are not undergraduate degrees in the US. So you can go and you can do a pre-medicine track or a pre-law track, but you cannot do an undergrad degree in medicine, law, or physiotherapy. So again, we can advise you on that, but all of those things in the US require you to do postgrad studies. And so it's important to know that would be a 7-year journey from beginning your undergrad to graduating as a doctor, as a lawyer, a 7-year journey in total. So it looks a bit different to the UK. If you're thinking this process is someone for only A grade students, You would be wrong about that. I've shown the grading scale, and those achieving 5s and 6s or grade Bs will do very well in the process, and it's also okay to have some C grades as well. So it's not just for grade A students. If you're thinking that every scholarship is a full one, that's also incorrect. So not every student gets a full scholarship, and if they don't, the parents need to contribute a shortfall to cover the shortfall in that amount as well. So in terms of being an athlete, if you're thinking that you can't get an academic scholarship, that's incorrect, and some of our best student athletes are getting both an academic and athletic scholarship. And so combining those both together gets you actually the greatest deal. So I would say to any young person, if you're listening and you're 15 or 16, you should be aiming to get as much as you can from both pots, aiming to stack an academic and an athletic scholarship. In terms of what do you have to study? Well, that choice is totally yours. So these universities have a range of degree choices on offer, and you can essentially choose a degree major of your choice. You absolutely don't need to study sport or sports science or sports management, but we realise that many students do want to do that, and that's where their interest lies. US degrees, of course, are fully recognised. You'd be getting a bachelor's degree. It would be recognised around the world. And those that say that the US is only for wealthy families, again, that's incorrect. And we see every year that those that are getting athletic scholarships or academic scholarships or both are often getting a significantly cheaper university experience than those that are staying at home and paying in full in the UK. So you can really use your athletic talents in the US, and that's a huge benefit. Is your talents, your academic and your athletic talents, will raise your value and will get those universities to offer you scholarships, which significantly offset the cost of attending university. So it can be much cheaper than your home country if you're getting those scholarships as well. So it's not just for wealthy families. Just in wrapping up then, just to show a recruitment journey. So this is a student who has started in August 25, so just a couple of months ago. He began the journey with us almost 2 years prior to starting. Okay, so coaches, the recruitment journey and the communication window opens about 2 years in advance on June 15th, in his case of 23. So coaches could essentially speak to him if they wanted to from that date. So he got his exam results in August 23. He had a consultation with us and we helped him set some goals then in that September based on his exam results. We got busy building his profile, his highlights, his video highlights, and working with him on the SAT. And all of those things then allowed us to get him into promotion by the May of 2024. He began to get interest from coaches almost a year after beginning the process, and from there those calls with interest became offers and eventually led to his commitment and signing. So he was signed for his university 1 year out prior to that university starting, and he got his official notification of that. From there, the final things we had to do were just guide him through the visa process and his embassy interview. We did all of that in April, which left him able to relax through the summer and prepare for departure in August. So you can see there a 2 year journey for an athlete with all of these critical time points along the way. Couple of alumni. Again, we've mentioned Mayulia Sala from Millfield has gone to California State Fullerton. She was a 2024 athlete. Finn O'Neill from Ireland is a decathlete at San Antonio, Texas, another Division I university. We have Kai Crawford. He's improved about 4 seconds over the 800 meters at University of Alabama. Alex Riley this year has joined Oliver Patton at Oklahoma State, and we have Omar Badjo, the Scottish record holder in the 400s, out at Life University with Dominic Demerit, who was an Olympic athlete himself for the Bahamas. So we're really proud of the programs that we've placed our athletes into. Each of those programs are well considered and are leaders in their events. So we're pleased to see these athletes progressing. Kai, for example, is coming to the end of his university career, whilst Alex and Omar are just getting started. So we have a number of athletes in a lot of different places. And it is important to say for parents, we're not just a track and field agency. We do have soccer players at Penn State. We've had hockey players at Stanford. We have tennis players at Cornell and hockey players at Princeton. So we are a wide company with over 70 staff to assist in placement, regardless of the sport. We do have a cost for what we do. Our costs are shown there on the screen. Essentially, those are one-time costs, and that allows us to lead the athlete through the process, be their personal guide for a period of maybe 2 or 3 years, depending on when they sign with us. So that allows them to get a dedicated staff member, admission support, negotiating scholarship deals, and so on. So we have 2 services there, but of course we can talk to you much more about that on a one-to-one basis. Just in closing today then, and this is the very last slide before I ask if you have any questions, I think at this point of your career, if you're a 15 or 16-year-old athlete, you need to be thinking about, what do I need next in my career if I want to transition to senior sport? Do I have appropriate training partners? Will I be able to attend a university nearby? Is my coach a volunteer part-time, or do I need a full-time coach going forward? Do I have the equipment and the facilities and the strength and conditioning I need? Think about all of that, and then if you do think the US is a pathway for you, you would want to have an early consultation, ideally as early as 15, but also fine at 16 or 17, just to check your eligibility and to check your personal performance standards against the NCAA. When you get into the process, you should definitely aim to engage with a broad range of coaches. So whether you come through us at First Point or you go off into this process yourself, you shouldn't just be headhunted by the first coach that comes onto Instagram and sends you a personal message. In fact, that's not the way to be recruited at all. So you should aim to engage with multiple coaches, be widely promoted, receive feedback and offers from as many as possible, and then compare, maybe even after visiting, with which will be the best for you. I would say make sure you understand the academic system. So initially you take core classes as an undergraduate student. So everyone takes some English, math, American history. You then take your elective classes as your degree major, but you can, if you're a good student, choose to also take a minor subject or a double major. So maybe you take, for example, business as a major with a minor in sports management. So your secondary interest would be your minor. Or maybe you're a really excelling student and you choose to do double major in English and history, for example. But it's important to talk through all of that and to know what you're getting into. And then I would just say, regardless of where you're going, the ideal time to be in the visa process is 6 months in advance, because there's a period for application, a period for assessment, an embassy interview, which may have a waiting list, and then your passport gets held for a few weeks. And you want to have all of that nice and secure long before you actually jump on that flight. So I would just say getting into it early really lets you set up for success and means there are no major stresses along the way. At this point, I'm just going to pass it over to any of you that have been listening. These are my contact details, and I'll just ask if you have any questions.